What's up, everybody? Welcome to a late night edition. My name is PLD, and who am I with? Of course,
I'm Richard Eric Jarvi. Welcome to Class Action. You know, it's the classiest show on the interwebs.
You know, you keep saying that every week, and I feel
never give up on it.
I feel like you're willing it to happen, and I'm not sure we're ever going to quite get there. I mean, I got to tell you, last night I was on the Gucciverse. I definitely didn't feel classy. It was something else, but
I think we're classing up the joint today because this is a very special episode for us.
It is. Well, I'll tell you real quick. This is a different class action. We should do class action weekly, usually on Saturdays, pre-recorded, where we put up option A versus option B. That could be directors, actors, movie franchises, whatever it is, and we place them up against each other with 5 custom-made categories, and we throw them out together and see who's going to win. But every once in a while, about once every month or so now, we do a special class action live, where we tend to do a different format. We kind of we break the format. We go, what do we want to do on these? And we do some rankings.
Yeah, the rankings, they've been a lot of fun because I think Kevin Smith was one of my favorite ones that we ranked on. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
With the Switchblade, we had Rachel Silvestrini and also PJ Campbell. We ranked the whole Lewis universe. And of course, last month we had Mark Riley on. And also Matthew Kearns, Action Army stalwart, and we ranked the Superman live-action Superman franchise.
Yep, that was when I had some huge connection problems. All good right now, no problems today. I'm hoping.
You're not going to pop all over all different rooms trying to see what the connection will be. You're good. Okay. Well, we did have this week. We decided we had talks about what we were doing. We came up with a topic for a show. It's going to be forthcoming still. And on that topic, we discovered what we wanted to do for our live rankings this one. Jarvi, why don't you tell us about how that came about as far as this topic?
Do you mean how we came upon to do top 5 Tony Scott movies?
Yes, that's
it. I think we even had Eddie Green as a possible guest, when we started thinking about it. So we wanted to do something with Pelham. So I figured, why not do Pelham 1, 2, 3 versus Unstoppable with Eddie Green, because he has this unreasonable love for Pelham and Unstoppable. So I figured, why not have him on and do those 2 movies? Then we started thinking, why not do the entire, or not the entire library, but maybe a top 10 or a top 5 list of Tony Scott, because we really love Tony Scott, more than probably anyone else.
Maybe.
And there's one person who might even love Tony Scott more than you and me.
We did. We mentioned the taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. We know one person specifically has a very big affinity, and so we said, you know what? It's time. We were on his YouTube channel. He graciously gives us space to have this very show on. So we figured, you know what? We're going to get him in here. Let's bring him on right now. There it is. Ben Bateman, welcome to Class Action. How you doing, man?
Yes, I'm here. I'm so excited. You guys brought me on for the perfect show. Not only is this the perfect show, but you're the perfect hosts of this show. Jarvi and Denuzio, the legends, the OG legends. Jarvi, I haven't seen you in fucking ages, man. I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah, I know. I can't make the live shows really because whenever you stream, it's 3 or 4 a.m. for me. Right now, it's even 6:30 for me when we started. But even though I'm not there live, I'm always watching. I'm always watching after that, so I'm always there in the shadows.
That's right. So we were talking Tony Scott, and right away, let's say there. Hey, look, Galagos from the super chat right there. I'll throw it in there. Oh, I love me some Tony Scott. But waiting for this episode, Andres, we're happy to be excited, man. Love Andres Galagos, man. He's a great guy. Newest member of the Dungeon in the movie Trivia Schmodown.
Yes, exciting.
Enter the singles tournament coming up for that. But you know what? Let's talk about Tony Scott. I think we should have a quick breakdown. He's not someone who a lot of people will say, I love Tony Scott. He's not those directors you hear about. When I was growing up, I heard Spielberg. You hear about Scorsese. You start getting to maybe Ridley Scott, maybe even.
You even hear more about Michael Bay than Tony Scott, really.
So how did you guys first get into Tony Scott? Jarvi, you can start with you. Why don't you start with you, Jarvi?
I think it was Man on Fire that I truly started to pay attention to him. I think Man on Fire has been my go-to movie to watch with my dad for a while. So that was the movie for me that got me hooked with Tony Scott. Because sure, I'd seen Top Gun before, but I wasn't really hooked like that. I don't know. Man on Fire and revenge movies always had a special place for me. So that's I was okay, this guy. Okay.
That's
right.
Very Denzel.
I think for me, I remember seeing in theaters back to back to back his last three. So I definitely saw in theaters Deja Vu, Pelham, and Unstoppable. And I think by the time the last one came out, I kind of had this feeling of like these movies with Denzel feel like awesome. They just feel like super fun, like they're cool to watch. They just make me feel like Denzel's a movie star and they're exciting. And like, I don't know. I don't think I had looked in at that point in the mid 2000s into who was directing those movies. And then it was kind of around that time that, I was kind of looking in and realizing like, wow, they're all directed by the same guy. Oh, wow. Like Man on Fire, that movie's great. And then I saw Crimson Tide, I remember for the first time, like 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember thinking like, this is like the quintessential 90s action. Like it's just everything I want. And it's just got it. And then you start to look at it and I was like, oh, but he also did Top Gun. He was a True Romance guy. Even like a lot of his other stuff, Beverly Hills Cop 2 and Last Boy Scout. Like you start to realize this guy had been talked about as sort of the working action director for years. Like Hollywood treated him like he was the hired gun you'd get to just make some action movie. But in retrospect, he's as stylized and special as an action director as Michael Bay or really, any of the major action directors. It was his death that really got people to look back and realize it. And I think it was probably my sort of moment in that mid, 2010s looking back at it that I started to realize there aren't that many movies that make me feel like these movies feel like this guy does it. He like does this thing in this particular way that these are just super rewatchable. And I like love all of them.
It's true. I mean, I know when I grew up, and I'm older than you guys. I was in the 80s, so I saw a lot of these movies when they came out. I saw Top Gun. I did see Crimson Tide, but I was never much at that point looking for directors. I just watched good movies. I didn't really put them all together. And then in the 2000s, I actually missed a lot of films because I had my child was born and everything else. I just stopped watching movies. So I kind of came back to the movies in the 2010s. And actually, believe it was Action Movie Anatomy where I had some holes I had to fill while I was watching episodes of that. And I started watching some of these films and I heard you guys talking about Tony Scott. And that's when I put it all together. And I realized that his director to me, and I hesitate saying this because I said this before, is that it sometimes comes off, it sounds like it might be a negative, but it's not meant to be a negative. He's just super competent. He's a competent filmmaker, and that you know what you're getting from him. He's never going to do you dirty. He is a very consistent, even like the least film on this list for me is one that I could watch and not have any trouble. Wouldn't want to turn it off. I put it on cable. I'd watch it, no problem. And every time he comes out, he just had a certain stylized. And it got to the point where he knew what he was doing so well. He actually could have a Tony Scott factory in a way. Yeah, he had these little pieces they put in always, and they always seem to work. And that's the key word, Ben. Rewatchable. You could put a Tony Scott movie on, and you're having fun. No matter where you are.
Yeah, the stylized nature, guys. I have to tell you, I smashed my wine glass a second ago. I tried to keep it together.
Oh no! Yeah, I saw you struggling. Sort of. I was like, should we talk about this?
It spilled everywhere, and I feel like I should probably give me about 2 minutes. You guys just riff, and I'll be right back.
For sure.
All right, that sounds good. Ben. All right, we'll give you the update up there. All right, when Ben comes back, we'll put him back on. I thought that was too. I'm not sure if I should mention it.
I was just reading the chat. I'm like, Ben needs more wine. I'm like, I don't think so. Probably had enough.
This is what happens when you have a live YouTube streaming. We can't edit it out in post, guys. So while we were talking about these, though, we were talking backstage.
Oh yeah,
go ahead.
I was just thinking, like Ben said, like he remembers seeing his last three movies in the cinema, like Deja Vu, Pelham, and Unstoppable. It's a sad thing because I feel like with his last two movies, like he's always been, he's been talked about a lot, like style over substance. We talked about it briefly. Like Man on Fire almost has like excessively too much, this fast editing. Like Domino has like way too much of that. It's still like a pretty decent movie, but with Pelham and Unstoppable, he found this sweet spot. He was truly in his lane. I feel like he found an exact amount of how to use that stylized editing, but still keep it story oriented enough.
Makes sense.
So it's really, really a shame that we didn't get more of him and Denzel and them collabing together.
Oh yeah, honestly speaking, I remember the one of the things I will say both before I go into my other story about what we were talking about backstage before we went live. I really wanted to see, after seeing those three movies, Pelham, Deja Vu, Unstoppable, I really made me want to see what would the Equalizer have been if Tony Scott had directed it. Not that Antoine Fuqua's vision was great. It was still a good movie. I enjoyed the movie, but I feel like that could have continued. We could have had that combination, like could have gone for a lot more because we're still getting Tony Scott, Denzel Washington vehicles, and like how good would that be? I mean, again, instead of having those three plus Crimson Tide, plus plus Men on Fire, we could have like almost 10 of them. It could have been like you could have one of the greatest combinations of directors, actors of our time. It really could have been that, but unfortunately, life happens, the tragedy happens, and we're stuck without it, unfortunately. But what's also funny about this? We mentioned this backstage as we were getting ready. We were kind of hammering down. We all have our notes written down. We looked at Tony Scott's entire filmography, and as I mentioned before, even the worst Tony Scott movie, or I shouldn't even say worst. I should say my least favorite.
Yeah,
and I'll put it out there right now. My least favorite Tony Scott movie was Days of Thunder. I saw a little bit like a Top Gun 1.5 with a little bit of less likable Pete Mitchell, and also had the trouble with the idea of the building up the antagonist and then all of a sudden taking him away and trying to build up another antagonist halfway through the movie. But even that, it's on cable. I'm watching it. So we're struggling here getting our top 5 honorable mentions. They're all like so closely. We're so closely related. They're so closely ranked together. It's like there's not this big epic thing. It's all here. And so even taking out some of these are like ripping our arms off. And the funny thing is, I even saw in the chat before in some of our forum chats and things like that. I mentioned Class Action, we're doing top 5 Tony Scott. And I swear I saw like 13, 14, 15 different people going, oh, you better talk about this movie. Better mention this movie. Somebody better mention this movie. I like this movie best. And it's like, and I said, I don't want to break anybody's heart. I'm like, we're not going to actually talk about that one too much because it's probably not going to be on our list. Anyway, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. I just want to pop out in the chat real quick. I did not know that. I didn't either.
I was, no idea.
Great. And the great thing in Gallagher, by the way, he sent me this great interview right after Tony Scott passed away. He sent me this Q&A about Tony Scott. It was with Quentin Tarantino and Richard Kelly from Southland Tales, who wrote Domino, talking about their experiences. Of course, Quentin with True Romance and Richard Kelly with Domino, which are very spiritually kind of tied together as far as I'm concerned. But it's a great look into that. So if I can find that for you, if anyone wants to mention to me, I could probably send on what he sent to me, because that was it was a great interview for me to see that. But you know what? Without further ado, for now, I know Ben will get back in time. You want to start getting into maybe our honorable mentions until Ben gets back?
Yeah. I think we should, but I'll quickly say that all of the top 2 are they're firmly in the top 2. The next 3, they're you can interchange anything. And from 1 to 4, all of these movies are in my top 50 greatest movies of all time. So that shows how much I friggin' love Tony Scott.
Wait, I can actually stop you for 1 second. I just realized something. Can you turn around? What jersey is it? I just want to see what jersey that is. You're okay. All right. We'll wait for Ben to come back to that. So, let's get into our honorable mentions. You want to start with your first? I have 3 I can talk about real quick. Why don't you tell me some here?
I probably would have 3 as well, but I worked so hard to get it down to 2.
Right.
So, my honorable mention, one of them is your least favorite Tony Scott movie. Mine is Days of Thunder, and I grew up I had the VHS. I watched that movie every day almost, and I almost love everything about the movie except for Nicole Kidman, who truly is a great actress now, but she had zero chemistry with Tom Cruise, and she did not do well in that movie. Well, anything else, I truly love that movie.
Let's be honest, Tom Cruise doesn't really have much sexual or love chemistry with
only with himself.
With himself, yes. And Magnolia, that kind of thing, is respecting the cop. That he can do. Otherwise, doesn't really work out well for him. All right, so Days of Thunder is your first mention. I'll throw out my first.
It really is Top Gun, Top Gun in NASCAR. But they're the chemistry with Duvall and Michael Rooker. It's what makes that movie.
And I will say that I agree. Michael Rooker is Suburban Days. He is one. Even though it's my least favorite, he's one of my favorite. I think that's why I didn't like it as much. I wanted Rooker to be like the main antagonist throughout. But that's kind of neither here nor there. Or at least
I kind of like that he turned around and became like a friend of his. That was a really good relationship in that movie.
Oh, it was. I think I would have liked that it happened like at the end after it's all said and done, kind of thing. Maybe I don't know. It's too late for that now.
Come on, he drove his car so he could get his monies to have for his family so they could build a house.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
All right, enough. We'll throw it there now. How about my first alternate? My honorable mention is actually Top Gun. Top Gun, to me, honestly, the more I watch it, I feel like it's more of an iconic movie than a good one.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It feels like a music video at times.
It feels a little bit like a music video. Tony Scott's just starting to get his feet underneath him after the hunger, and there's so many good moments in the film, like the flybys. There's the iconic, the homoerotic volleyball playing sequences. There's a lot of great moments in there, but to me, I feel like it didn't work as a complete film. I just don't. At the end, there's this unseen like enemy aircraft that's going on, and all of a sudden it just kind of ends, and you're just like, oh, where are they now? What? That's how you're ending, and then you got Tom Cruise and Kelly Preston I'm not sorry, not Preston, Kelly McGillis. In the like they're pretty much lack of. I mean that whole love sequence again, maybe not even Kelly's fault because Tom Cruise is just horrible.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna take a shower.
He has that like an interesting thing that happens with doing oeuvres like you did. You're watching like all the directors' movies, like watching Tony Scott movies through. He has like a weird thing with graphic, like truly graphic sex scenes. Like there's a lot of licking and tongue using, like excessive amounts of it. There's like in Top Gun, it's like and in Revenge, like there's so much like stomach licking and stuff. You don't see that in movies. Like Tony Scott likes to do that. It's so weird.
That's right there. Thank you, Andres. Yeah, I agree. As it is. I mean, I even love the cast. I love Michael Ironside in it. I love it. I mean, he's one of my favorite like genre actors. I love seeing him in there. That's true too. Take my breath away from Berlin. That's another big part of the thing. But again, that's the moment. There's these peaceful moments, and it's a great, love letter to naval the Naval Academy or whatever. Like that was almost like a naval.
You said naval, like there's in the naval area. What I just said.
But that's what it worked. And it had this big patriotic feel, so there's a lot of love around it. It's a little hollow to me on the inside, but still enough. Even though I'm decrying it, is still iconic enough for me to put it on my honorable mentions. So, Jarvi, go with your next one, buddy.
I'm kind of relieved that you put it in your honorable mentions.
Right.
All right, my next one is actually, this is the one I struggled hard with because I wanted to put it on my list, but unfortunately I still didn't. It's Pelham 1, 2, 3.
All right, you got Ben coming back. Looks like. All right, y'all good, Ben? We all good?
We're safe. We got a fresh glass. We're good to go.
Red wine. Oh, that's.
I guarantee there will be glass in my foot in the next day. But we did our best.
All right.
Tried to. So what I missed, guys?
I just kind of said a few things, and I did give we gave our initial honorable mentions. Jarvi brought up Day of the Thunder, and I brought up Top Gun. Those are our honorable mentions to the list. Jarvi's about to go on to his next statement, but before he does that, since you're back on screen, I want to say, Jarvi, can you turn around? I can't believe you dared.
What do you mean? Is there something?
I can't believe
you son of a bitch! Come on, you're wearing it again.
Oh,
come on, man!
I can't believe you wore that to be guessing with you.
Hear me out though. I know zero about baseball, right? So when I was in New York City, I was like, okay, I'm in New York. I gotta get something, because I'm not a fan of these I Love New York t-shirts. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get this baseball shirt. Like, I have no idea who Stanton is, nothing. So I'm wearing this stuff happens, I see the Giancarlo Stanton moment. I'm like, okay, oh shit. So I bought this jersey.
Yeah.
Right. So
you done fucked up, son.
I gotta somehow, come up with an excuse for it. Interesting thing happens. When I got this jersey and I started wearing this jersey, you started winning. What happened when you won? You won the fucking championship. Ooh. You became the champion of the Schmodown.
So you're
so
saying
me wearing the Stanton jersey.
it
There
broke
is-
the
there is
standard.
good jersey
You're never
that's
you're
coming
never
with
gonna let.
this.
Yeah, okay. Hey, you know what, man, Jarv? I gotta tell you, because I'm look. I had all my conspiracies about dark chocolate and salmon, so I'm just gonna. I'll let you do it, man. Honestly, you're in my corner. You're in my corner.
Always.
All
Always.
right. All right. Ben, why don't you give us since we both actually gave one already, why don't you give us your first honorable mention?
All right. So my first honorable mention. This hurts so much to say it. It's the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
That's my second honorable mention. Yeah.
It's crazy to say it out loud because I love that movie so much.
Mhm.
Galagos, thank you so much for the wine glass. I had actually done a pretty good job about 4 of those when I moved in here, and that was like a year and a half ago. And I've actually kept all 4 alive for a year and a half.
It's pretty good.
So yeah, that was the first one, and it's because I'm at a high table, which this is still in the frame. What an asshole! Come on. Look, Pelham. The bottom line about Pelham is that I think what I love so much about Pelham is that it's sort of the surprising underdog of a movie. It does. I love Garber. I love Denzel in that movie like so much with all my heart. He's really terrific. He really, honestly, and I think it's actually one of those like. I hope that someday film historians own the fact that that's like a great Denzel performance. He's really phenomenal. He doesn't phone it in. You feel like he is that character. He lives it. He does a lot too, like the cream colored kind of chubby guy shirt with the tie. Like he really just, you feel like he's this guy.
He has a stutter as well. He's like, I'm gonna. He's not your like average like true action hero. He's your everyday guy, and that stutter is like a nice touch to the character. I feel like
he's not just an everyman in an action movie. He's like a true everyman. And if it wasn't Denzel, you'd be celebrating the performance. And I actually, as much as I think Ryder and Travolta's performance is absurd, and it is, it's also pretty effective. And like
it is.
He has the two of those guys have a lot of great scenes together. I think that movie's good. I don't think it's a great movie. Like I think it does some things wrong and it's a little absurd, but I wanted to make it top 5 so bad. It has problems. It has like major problems for me. And like what's good about it is just a good performance by Denzel. That's pretty much it. I like Gandolfini too.
He's a great. I wouldn't call him a shit weasel because he's not really like a villainous type.
No,
what would you call like a sleazeball?
He's like somewhere in between. I also love the use of 99 Problems by Jay-Z to start the movie. I think that's like big fan.
Yeah, that sucks me right into the movie. I found that the second more I watched it, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to sit down and actually watch this one again because it was so good. I agree about Travolta. I love Travolta's performance. It is so over the top, but like if you commit to something that over the top, exactly, it shouldn't work. But if you commit to it so hard, like it almost goes back around. So that's a good performance.
Yeah. It's hard for me because that's like classically my Denzel, like that's like my Tony Scott movie. So it's weird to look at them all lined up and realize like it probably doesn't quite make the top 5 because he's a great director and that's not a great movie. It's just a very enjoyable one.
Very much so. All right. Jarvi, why don't you go with your next one? We'll breeze
that was Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. All right.
On that one.
My other one, the other one I want to mention is that I think it's one that wouldn't be on anybody's list per se. Is The Hunger. It is his film debut. What I love about The Hunger to me was that it's very much different than a lot. Like because I said before, they went to the Tony Scott factory at some point. This is pure Tony Scott before he's really found who he is, and it's a very different vehicle. There's not a lot of action in it. It's a very slow burn. It's like a horror story, but like it's not even a committed full. Like there's no jump scares. It's a psychological look at these
monsters.
Like
a fantasy movie as well.
It's a little bit of fantasy. It's got David Bowie in it. As David Bowie is a very eccentric, and it works very well in it. Susan Sarandon, it's a young Susan Sarandon in it, and it's something about. But there's hints of it. He has the Vangelis score, and he uses the synth beats to come in, and he uses the music as a character in a way, much like he eventually starts using with more of the 99 Reasons and things like that. But it goes in different directions that I'm used to seeing a Tony Scott movie, and so I don't know if it's just because it's so different that I like it, but I feel like it's something you should watch at least once. I probably wouldn't rewatch it very much. It's not what I'm going to put on a lot, but for a first time view, it's very artsy, a little bit pretentious, but it's still worth it's a good thing. Yeah,
there's probably still 3-ish Tony Scott movies I haven't seen. I think Hunger, Revenge, and there's probably one other.
Revenge you'd like actually.
I've never seen Domino. Actually, I think that might be the 3.
Domino. Domino. I don't know who to mention Domino, but Domino is a good one too. It's very much a spiritual sequel to to True Romance. I feel not sequel.
No, Man on Fire
spiritual.
feels like it's almost in the same vein as Man on Fire.
Wait, Domino, or are you talking about
Same
Revenge?
color.
Domino.
Same color for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I would say
Same
Domino.
palette, same editing style. Everything feels like It feels like he made Man on Fire, and then like I want to make a movie just like Man on Fire with a different story. So he used the exact same skin, but with a different story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I kind of felt like a little more like True Romance in a way, in terms of like the lunacy of it and the fewer like mescaline fever dream aspect. They have these very, but we'll talk about that. We're not going to spend all our time on our honorable mentions. We'll have into the real thing. So Ben, what was your other honorable mention then?
This is crazy, and you guys watching are going to go nuts, but it's Top Gun. And honestly, I thought a lot this week. I've thought a lot, believe it or not, this week as I got ready for this show about the way I feel about Top Gun versus the way the world feels about Top Gun, and trying to figure out why so many people think about that movie as a true, like I had Clark Wolf on Nerds and Suits this week, and we talked about, on a great conversation, young Tom Cruise. And she was like, I think Top Gun Tom Cruise is the sexiest Tom Cruise. You know, it's in the flight suit, and the aviators. And I was just like, really? Like that movie just is so silly and homoerotic and like over the top. Like it's hard to take any part of it. Like I can't imagine it being sexy. I can't imagine it being dramatic. Like but like, I think what I realized when I thought about it a little more was this movie could have made my top 5 and it could have been high, because I actually think this movie works really well. It's a very fun, very rewatchable action movie. It's not that I think it's good in the dramatic way that I like the best moments of Scott's later career. It like actually doesn't have a moment, I think, in the entire movie, other than maybe Meg Ryan talking to Tom Cruise. There's maybe a moment where like Tom Cruise talks about his dad, I guess, but like most of it's pretty popcorn. But even so, it's just exactly what the 80s action movie formula wanted, and it's hard to deny. I just don't like it quite as much as the other stuff, so it doesn't quite make my top 5. But I think it deserves the note because it's pretty important.
I agree with that. That's why I said when I said my honorable mention as well. It's more iconic than good. It just has there's so many moments, there's so many fun time moments. But as a film, it's okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, all right, then you want to break in? We'll just go ahead and break into our top 5 then.
I'm hyped. I'm not going to break this glass.
I feel like I should start with my top 5 because you guys just said that it's your honorable mention. Top Gun is my number 5.
It is okay.
So this is I was really struggling with either Pelham is gonna be my number 5 or Top Gun. I feel like Top Gun, with the fact that it is so iconic, the cast, like I feel like the movie, it wouldn't have been as great if they didn't cast as well as they did. Like you talked about Tom Skerritt and Meg Ryan, they're like these side characters that bring a lot of depth to the movie. And you know, without Val Kilmer in there, there's no way that movie's so sweet.
It's got those lines in there. You can't go wrong with it too. Those classic lines.
The music, everything. That's
something we didn't mention. That's the soundtrack is kind of kick ass. One of the most iconic soundtracks of the 80s.
It's one of the greatest. Yeah, it's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. And when I think about songs that I want to cover on Song from the Scene, honestly, there's like 4 songs from that movie. Now, I don't think I would be able to justify, because like the scenes they're in are usually not great. Like, it's just one of those 80s soundtracks where all the songs are good. But like Loverboy, what's it? In Your Eyes. Is that Loverboy? It is, right? Yeah. In Your Eyes. Yeah. I fucking love that song. It's incredible. I wanted that one. You know, Cheap Trick, Mighty Wings, obviously Berlin is incredible. You know, both Kenny Loggins songs are great. You know, I feel like there's like one other I said Mighty Wings already. There's like a shitload. The soundtrack has like 6 songs that are all amazing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you though, that soundtrack, even the score, like you think about with Top Gun Maverick, the sequel, that trailer came out. All you had to hear is that, and you're just like,
I know, Top Gun anthem, man, it's so good.
You're saluting, you're ready to go. I mean, so even though I didn't like the movie as much as others, I still was like amped about it. I mean, not just because Ed Harris is in it, but beyond that. All right, Ben, what is your number 5?
My number 5. Let me pull up my list to make sure I have it correct. My number 5 is Deja Vu. So this is a tough one, because like it's like this and Pelham have the same spot kind of thing. Like they both feel like they're almost like. But where I chose Deja Vu over Pelham is I actually think that Pelham in the first 20 minutes you can get turned off pretty fast. Like I as a casual viewer, if I'm watching Pelham in the first 20, I could just be like, schlubby Denzel, like this train movie, like this just doesn't seem interesting. Whereas Deja Vu starts in the first 10 minutes with a huge ferry explosion. It's a great, like gigantic, crazy looking explosion. And as soon as the cops start investigating it, you're getting peak Denzel. You get him showing up and being like, who's in charge here? Oh, the coffee pot, he's in charge. Oversized shirt. You get like him meets Val Kilmer, and he's like, oh, you're smart, where like the pattern of the whatever would be on the thing. And like just 30 minutes in that movie, I'm like, honestly, when I think about wanting to rewatch the Tony Scott Denzel catalog, Deja Vu is the one that comes to mind the most. I think it's because the first bit hooks me so hard. There's something so beautifully romantic about Denzel falling in love with Paula Patton as he's investigating the murder. Like, it's such a cool idea. The problem with the movie is that the last 45, it just totally falls apart. Like the last hour, really. But even like when Denzel's in the future and he's watching the video of them like murdering his partner, and he's like, brace yourselves, you're about to witness a murder. Like there's like really cool sci-fi thriller stuff in that movie. Obviously the technology is absurd, and like the whole entire description of Snow White, like they jump so far with like a lot of how it works. It's just like, Adam Goldberg is just like, let me explain to you how it works. And you're like, all right. But like the good in that movie, I've said it on our show before, but when Denzel goes to meet Paula Patton's dad and he gives him all the pictures and he's like, oh, it's okay. And he's like, no, I know how these things work. She has to matter to you, Officer Carlin. She has to matter to you. And you're like, oh shit. Like that's fucking cool. He's gonna like that's a great scene in a murder mystery. So I love this movie. I really do. I kind of hate the last 45. I don't think it's useless. I think Caviezel's a great villain. He has that one quote too about from time to time the what is it? The tree of freedom has to be.
It's the rock quote,
refreshed by the blood of patriots or something like that.
The tyranny of blood of patriots. Yeah, it's a tyranny. It has to be. I can't remember the exact quote now either.
Was that Jim Caviezel who played the villain?
Yes.
Yeah. He's a good bad guy. He's a good bad guy.
Oh yeah.
He's underutilized a little bit, I think, in the film. To be honest with you, I think he could have used him a little bit more.
He kills it.
He does. He does a great job with what he's got. I'll actually jump in real quick and say, I'll spoil it. This is my number 4. I actually love Deja Vu that much.
Oh wow.
I love Deja Vu more and more. I saw it the second time.
So I'm glad you guys put it on yours.
I saw it the second time through, and I loved it. I've come to terms with the Snow White thing, because I really find that the more you watch time travel movies or anything like that, you're never going to get something that's completely satisfying, because it's not real. Right. It's not real. You have to sort of let the idea go that I can justifiably like look the other way enough to enjoy this. But if I can just say, you know what, this will never make sense. And as long as like they're in the future, they're in the past, I can get this, I'll enjoy it more. And then once you do, that's why this movie's great. Because like if you get past that shit, who cares? Yeah, like truly, who cares?
Do you know it's interesting that? Sorry,
I was saying you got to understand this is what the movie is going to provide me as a story. And if I'm going to be willing to go along with the story, I have to be willing to go along with the rules, and that makes it work. Go ahead, Jarvi.
Yeah, it's interesting that Tony Scott himself in an interview said that this movie isn't science fiction; it's science fact. Which is kind of weird because it gets so bonkers. Like, I would call this movie science fact, and you're like, okay, all right,
okay.
Well, the writers, I'm pretty sure I've heard the writers have said that they think this is like the worst abomination piece of shit they've ever seen. They like wrote this, and then like they shot it and made it, and they were like, this is so bad. What is this? You guys changed it so much. But like, I just think it's also peak. It's peak movie star Denzel, which is like a really special moment in his career. It's almost like this is almost the moment when he's the most peak movie star Denzel. Like that mid to late part of 2000s where like he's kind of past. Yeah, he's like past Oscars. He's like into fully action. When you go see like a Denzel movie, you're just like, I'm going to be entertained and Denzel's going to be great. And that's all I need. Like, that's what this movie is.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is
it's got those moments.
Tom Cruise.
That's a good comparison right there. Yeah. That's exactly, you said before the coffee, but I love the sequence when like Denzel goes, I know this is not what you tell me. Explain it to me like I'm a child. He starts getting into this character. And he has a soft moments with Paula Patton too. I love I can't remember the exact line, but there's just one moment where he's trying to convince her what's going on, and like she asks him point blank something, and he like lies to her like for a second. He's like, "Yeah, I did. I knew that." No, I didn't. I didn't really know that. But it's just like soft moment with him, and it's just a great little moment. And that's another thing about the film. I actually love the supporting cast here. I love Val Kilmer in this role. I'm a big sucker for Eldon Henson. He was the guy who was actually operating the system. I don't see him in very many movies, but I
love that dude. He's got the kind of chubby face. You know who else is in this movie? You know who else is in this movie is Bruce Greenwood.
Yes,
I love Bruce Greenwood. And there's a great moment too in this movie when Val Kilmer is talking to Greenwood, and he's like, Greenwood's like, so what about this officer, this Doug Carlin? And Kilmer's like, he's smart, I like him. And Greenwood's like, I like him too. And you're like, and you're just like, yes, the powers that be like him. And Greenwood, yeah, you're an authority figure, but you like him. I'm so fucking in. Yeah, dude. Greenwood he's top notch in this. This is like some of my favorite Greenwood. He's like barely utilized, but he's just great.
He really is, man. I love that one.
Honestly, God, I know I'm going long on this one, but like,
go ahead.
A couple years ago, I interviewed Greenwood for 5 minutes, and when I didn't do a great job. I talked mostly about the trailer for Star Trek and how wonderful his delivery is of his like lines, because I just think it's great.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
It's so good. But like, I was kind of starstruck, and I wish I had really done the math on like just how great he had been and a number of things he'd been in that I loved, because I think Bruce Greenwood has been in like. He's not like that actor that's got 2 things I like. I think he's been in like 10 things I love. I would have so much rather asked him about Deja Vu. I would have so much rather asked him about like Double Jeopardy. I would have so much rather asked him about Dante's Peak. No, well, he's not in Dante's Peak, is he?
No, he's not.
I don't
Volcano? Is he Volcano maybe?
Or he's in the core.
I remember you and Drew talking about it on a previous stream, and you taled about Greenwood.
He's in the core.
Yeah, he's in. He might be. He's in the core. Also, like I think asking him about the voice of Batman in the animated series. Like there's so many things that I would just, and he was such a cool dude. I just didn't do a great job. So he kind of detached, but I'll bet you because he's a little smaller, if I had done a better job, I could have probably hung with him for 5'10" and gotten some real questions. And I kind of always regret it because he's like that guy that I just am like, man, the world doesn't know how good you are, dude, but you're great. You're fucking great.
There is a large contingent of those actors that you know is going to be there, and you know you love him, but nobody else seems to. But he is one of those guys. I love.
Do you know how many credits he's got? He's got 151 credits to his name as an actor.
Dude, and if you go look at a lot of them are those movies you'd see him and pop up in, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that scene in that movie I fucking adore. Like that's what I'm saying. He's that guy that he almost should have had like a leading man career, but he never quite got it. Right. So he just ended up as like the best friend, the villain, the boss, the president. He played the president in 13 days. He played fucking JFK in 13 days. I just watched that.
Also, National Treasure book, our national
Treasure, a book of secrets.
Yeah, man.
With that, Harris. You're right. But no, I love Greenwood. I love this movie, but that's why it's definitely my number 4. I'm very happy with that. I loved it more and more as I saw it. If I hadn't seen it again recently, I might have put it off the list. But I rewatched Tony Scott, and I loved it even more the second time I saw it. So
yeah, me too.
That's why it's in my list at this point. Let me jump ahead with my number 5. This is one I don't know how this is going to fall, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to head it out of the park here. Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Wow. Really? Okay.
And here's why I love it so much. To me, and I think this might be a generational thing. I don't know why, but as a kid who grew up in the 80s, this was almost one of the most peak 80s action movies there were. This is Eddie Murphy at his peak action swing. When he Beverly Hills Cop was a great movie, but didn't have the over-the-top vibe about it. And he has the most swagger in this movie than any other movie he has. And it's not just Eddie, it's the supporting cast as well. And Tony Scott brings this Christmas to it. He just finished filming Top Gun. He's just starting to come into his own. He has that music video style, but he's getting a little more swagger to it, a little more over the top. And everything kind of came together for me at the end. It's ridiculous. There's no doubt this is absolutely ridiculous. It's like Bad Boys 2 to Bad Boys 1. But for some reason, I will never turn this offense on. I think it's because I grew up with it. It's definitely a nostalgia feel for me, but I love this film so much.
Interesting. I think I honestly I watched this movie right when we started AMA. So probably like 2015 makes sense. And I feel like I watched it and I was like, not super invested. I felt I was kind of not paying great attention. And I think maybe I didn't quite appreciate yet just how much I liked Tony Scott. So it probably deserves a rewatch, like fully paying attention, but it never stuck out to me. So I can't add to your spiel there.
All right, that's okay.
It feels like the most unlike of Tony Scott movies as well. If I saw this movie, I had no idea who directed it, I would by no means say that it was Tony Scott.
Well, to me, I think there's a reason why. I think this is Tony Scott trying to this is Tony Scott entering a franchise. So to speak. He's trying to build off someone. This is not an original property for him. So him trying to like at least fit into that made him step back a little bit from his own Tony Scottness. But I thought he was able to do it so successfully that it made it for a very entertaining film. And again, it might be nostalgia talking, but pure 80s Eddie Murphy swagger. If I want Eddie Murphy swagger, and I'm not watching like Raw or one of his comedy stage things, I'm going to put in Beverly Hills Cop.
But there was surely some of that Raw stuff in there, like when he's like bringing the bomb in, like when he's like super sweaty, like coming in. There's like a lot of funny moments in that movie.
And the ending shootout sequence with Bridget Nielsen and everything else, the whole like old and top actor.
Bridget Nielsen, that's right.
Exactly, Bridget Nielsen's in there, and there's some great one line. It is peak 80s for me, so that's mine. So I'll go with that. That's my number 5. So, all right, let's move into our number 4s. Ben, why don't you start with the number 4 this time?
Number 4, I'm going to go with, and I believe I know what it is, but I got to check here. Number 4 is going to be Unstoppable. So
you put it higher than Pelham.
Well, what's interesting about Unstoppable is that upon rewatch, so the big thing that kind of swung my opinion of this movie is that Tarantino was on the rewatchables like 6 months ago, and he called Unstoppable one of the 10 best movies of the decade. Wow. Which is an absurd thing to say. But nonetheless, I got to hear Quentin Tarantino and Bill Simmons and Fennessy and Ryan talk for an hour about Unstoppable and really go scene by scene and talk about why that movie's great. What it really kind of made me realize is, and I always loved this movie. Like I always thought it was great. But what it really made me think about and realize was like, this movie is kind of doing the engaging version of what Pelham is. It's the better version because it doesn't have the performance that you sort of need to gamble your estimation on, which is like it doesn't have the Travolta, which is like so wonderful and so over the top, but also kind of silly. Yeah. It just has a young star and Denzel being that same level of peak Denzel we're talking about, and all the same level of character actors, and like every single time something in Unstoppable happens that's like a relevant moment, I don't know, visually it's very, very memorable. Like whether it's like Ethan Suplee running alongside the train trying to like flip the switch to stop the train in the first 25, or it's like, it's the helicopter pilot and he's trying to get on top of the thing and he gets blown up and he's fucking hanging there dead. Oh yeah. Or it's like, you also get all the really great conversation stuff between Chris Pine and Denzel, which has been parodied a lot, but it's also like, you think about like the story that Chris Pine is telling about his wife, about Darcy, and that he like they're having problems. They have a kid. She's got a friend. He's a cop. We get a new friend. Put the gun on the thing. Like it just sounds like a guy that would be like a guy who's just not great at communicating and like really territorial and loves his wife, but made a stupid decision. Like he feels like a very 3-dimensional character, and obviously the stuff with Denzel's daughters working in Hooters, like that feels a lot more like get a half gallon of milk. That's so much more that. But like
get a half gallon.
Get a gallon.
Yeah. There's just a lot in Unstoppable that when I watch the movie, I find myself thinking like, there's not really any downtime. It's just a super solid, very entertaining thriller. Kind of goes beyond what I think a lot of the like it doesn't have the problems Deja Vu and Pelham have, I guess is the point. I get that. It doesn't have it's a complete movie, which I think which Pelham and Deja Vu both feel like they are incomplete. They both have a serious issue, and this movie feels actually like I could recommend it to someone who doesn't know who Tony Scott is, and they just like would love it, which is why I put it a little higher.
I get that. I will actually argue this is not on my list. It was one of the ones that I wanted to I did want to put in the honorable mention too. But what I love about this movie to me is that you don't have the antagonist. Like you don't have the Travolta. You don't have Jim Caviezel. I can never say that name. But Caviezel, thank you. But you don't have an antagonist or a villain to focus on. Your antagonist, your villain, is a train. It's a train
It's
that
a
gets
really
up.
good villain, dude. It's a
Great
really scary movie monster. Like
And
it
that's
Or
scares the shit out
incompetence
of you.
is the villain.
I think that
Incompetence.
Tony Scott makes incompetence is the villain. You're right. Ethan Suplee is the villain in a way, but Tony Scott makes this feel like an old monster movie, and like he does a great job with the tone of it. Every time you see the train, I actually get this like little bit of fear in me when you see like wow, you see the train is almost hit and everything. You're like, holy shit! Now you're at the edge of your seat, and that's such a great. It shows how great of a director Tony Scott is when you can make a moving vehicle be as scary, if not scarier, than like John Travolta in Pelham or anything else. It works on so many levels for me. I love this choice, and I wouldn't say it. Go ahead.
I think also, so we talk about we praise Taylor Sheridan for Hell or High Water and Wind River and turning these parts of the country into these very sort of very real, very tangible tropes that we aren't familiar with. You know, whether it's like a Native American community and a white man coming in, or you know, Hell or High Water, it's this sort of aging Texas real estate and these people with mortgages and the banks taking advantage, like very underdeveloped small towns. Unstoppable has a similar sort of thing with he's the son of someone who's in the business, so he gets the early access to the job, and they're all kind of getting phased out for younger people, and Pittsburgh, and it's like very much it feels like a fading and dying business. It doesn't feel like something that's very affluent and exciting. It has that same kind of like, I'll bet you people in this world relate to this, and I'm just getting a peek into this. And Tony Scott does a good job with it, which I think he should be commended for, because he chose something and framed it that way that I think is exciting and very interesting and very compelling. It has a lot of texture that I think he doesn't get that credit.
It's something that's difficult to do. It's hard to make something like that accessible to people who don't get it.
Is that based on a true story?
I think it had.
Wow,
I think
I had no idea.
Believe there was a grain of truth from it. I thought there was some kind of truth in there. It was not quite obviously that exciting, I don't think, but it had. It was, I don't think it had explosions or anything like that, or the guy hanging off the helicopter. I don't believe, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. And speaking of that, I do love that actor in there too. The underrated. I don't really know him. Lou Trimp is his name. He was the redneck guy who did the diner.
The guy that plays Ned. He's fucking incredible. Yeah,
Right?
he's so good, man.
Oh,
Who
good.
is that? Say his name.
He's got the ponytail, and he's eating the diner at the beginning, and he's like a hero at the end.
He's hitting on the waitress, and he goes, call. Oh, I'm right on my way, man. I'm on my way. I'm just caught in traffic.
I'm on my way.
Oh, the guy with the pickup truck.
Yes, the pickup.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's such a great. Every time you appear on screen, I start smiling. I'm like, this guy's gonna be.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this guy's gonna save the day. He's gonna be Denzel's sidekick. This is fucking great. Yeah, great.
There's one thing that I would like. If I could tweak something in that movie in Unstoppable, I would, at the very end of the movie, when they're like, they've overcome the train issue and everything, and they're talking with Pine, and they haven't said their names to each other before. And that's like, when they finally like say, they're like shaking his hand, Chris Pine says his name, and then Denzel says, Garber.
It should have been shared.
It's a prequel to Pelham 1, 2, 3 when it was a motorman.
It should have been, man. It should have been a shared universe. That would have made me so fucking happy. God, if that was Garber,
that would have been peak level of talk. All right, Jarvi, let's hit your number 4.
All right, my number 4. I feel like none of you will have this on any of your lists, but this movie is insanely good. It's Spy Game with Brad Pitt and Robert Redford.
Okay. Interesting.
That is like the back and forth with Brad Pitt and Robert Redford. I feel like I'm like a pretty big fan of Robert Redford, but not his older stuff. I really like his like later stuff in his career, and like the way he plays cat and mouse in that game. Like he's I don't think there's a more charismatic actor than Robert Redford.
He's definitely up there. I'll give you that. He's definitely up there.
He's like top of the list. Yeah, man. I mean, he's phenomenal. When I watched Spy Game a few years ago, I remember, and I thought it lacked heart for me. I think obviously the stars being, the stars, they're huge stars, and like does all the Tony Scott things I love, but I didn't walk away from it with like, there was this one scene, like the way I felt when I watched The Abyss, where I was like, wow, I didn't know that scene existed in a movie. That shit was crazy. Like that Spy Game doesn't have that for me. So I remember like thinking like, I would watch this again. Maybe I'll go watch Spy Game again tonight, because honestly, I've just seen it the one time, but it doesn't have the emotion for me. So what about it does that for you?
there's the final scene when Brad Pitt is rescued from the Su Chow prison. He's like, and throughout the whole movie, Robert Redford says to him, "Is like, when you go off book, I will not come after you. You're on your own." And they talk about, this Operation Dinner Out. Robert Redford says, "All right, I'll remember that." And when they're finally flying back, like Brad Pitt's like beaten up, he's getting rescued, he's flying in the chopper. The chopper pilot says like, "Operation Dinner Out." He's like, "What? Say again." "Operation Dinner Out." And it's just like his face is swollen, beaten, and he just starts crying because he knows that Nathan Muir, Robert Redford came for him, even though he said he wouldn't. There's like that moment there. That is a very emotional moment. I feel like you should give that movie a rewatch. There's a lot of these,
You're selling me on that. You're selling me on that.
Yeah. It's a strong pitch here.
There's like Nathan Muir, like again, Robert Redford's line. He needs to get a lot of information about an asset. He pretty much has not enough prep time, and he uses the metaphor of, so we got to do twice the sex with half the foreplay. And he has these moments throughout the movie when he's using these one-liners. When he says it, it feels like it's not cheesy at all, because he can sell anything.
I will say briefly that I didn't like Ben. It's kind of mid-level Tony Scott for me. I kind of felt like I should give it a rewatch because it wasn't the movie I expected, maybe. There wasn't as much in the field. It was all the stuff that happened in the office, and so much of it was cat and mouse back in the home office, and you see a little bit about Brad Pitt. And it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't what I expected, and so it kind of tainted the view for me a little bit. Sometimes expectations can do that, even if it doesn't mean it's a different movie. It just, even being different, can give it a little bit of a souring. So maybe I should give it another, because you are pitching it really well to me right now. So maybe
it's a strong pitch. It's a strong pitch. Did I miss, by the way, when I was cleaning up my accident, that there had been a super chat from John Lastrina, call sign #Ladies Night. Tower, this is Ghost Rider requesting a flyby, because
yes, we did have that. That's true. We didn't say it, John Lastrina. Thank you, Tower. This is Garrett. Yes, Ghost Rider requesting a flyby.
Yeah,
negative.
You,
the pattern
John.
is full. Negative. The pattern is full. But yeah, okay.
Just listen to. I will give you the link of Spy Game soundtrack. It is an amazing soundtrack by Harry Gregson Williams. There is this one song especially. I will share it to you later. I know, Ben, you would appreciate that. I know you're a score guy.
Absolutely, man.
Says Galgos is also trying to sell it, saying he didn't like it the first time as much, but it aged well. So perfect. All right. My number 4 was Deja Vu, like I said. So let's move into our number 3s. Ben, go ahead with your number 3.
So my number 3 is probably the most well-loved and famous Tony Scott movie, and that is True Romance. I think it's definitely a movie that has aged interestingly. It's not considered to be the sort of classic that I think it once was. I think there was a time and a place when, if I had said this movie was number 3 on the list of his best movies, the world would have been like, "Are you kidding? He made that movie and then a bunch of bad movies." And I feel like that's not the case anymore. I think people have sort of given credit to the fact that True Romance is special and sweet, but also that Tony Scott is really special for other reasons. Mm-hmm. And so I love True Romance. Like, when I rewatch this movie, it has obviously a couple very famous scenes. It's the Tarantino script. It has, it has a very, very famous walk and Hopper scene.
So great.
It's an incredible scene. I mean, Gandolfini destroying Patricia Arquette is pretty hard to watch. It's like super fucked up. Slater is like a really, really great character in that role. Right? It's interesting because I think about him, and I think about like so many other actors in that moment that could have been cast in that role, and like he feels like he could have been 20 guys. Like, it feels like he's good, but there's so many guys from that era that I feel like could have carried that role. Because the movie's not great because of him. He's just good in the movie. And like, it feels like a Tarantino script that is, imagine if Tarantino had directed this movie, right? Like, you really do feel like this movie would be sort of regarded differently. It'd be regarded 20% greater if it was a Tarantino movie.
I can see that.
It's just missing that one thing. And then ultimately what it comes down to is that, Gary Oldman as Drexel is just the most outrageous character you've ever seen in a movie. And so he's sort of like, that's like the best thing in the entire movie. He's like, I don't even know how to frame it. Like, Gary Oldman as Drexel is what makes True Romance to me the number 3. If he wasn't in this, if this had just been like a throwaway, this might not even make my top 5. I like this movie a lot, but he's so memorable in that role that it jumps it way high for me.
I don't actually. I'm going to give it to you now. This is also my number 3.
My number 3 as well.
All of our number.
Wow,
Yeah.
crazy!
Wow, that is
Amazing.
crazy. Holy cow! I think it's the same reasons you gave. What I love about it, though, one of the things they talked about, the Galagos gave me the question and answer with Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino would talk about this, and he said that a lot of things that you thought were Quentin Tarantino-y or whatever, it was more Tony Scott's doing. He actually wanted to make this lunatic, like mescaline fever dream type of movie, and he added all these things. Like Quentin Tarantino, like the sequence where they talk on the billboard, for example, they have that hanging out on the billboard moment with that was actually a Tony Scott thing, because 3 times Quentin Tarantino had them sitting on the couch in the apartment. Tony Scott's like, I can't do that. We're not gonna have three scenes on the couch. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna put them on a fucking billboard that's out there. Nobody thinks about this kind of stuff. But
it's such a good scene, that one that you talked about. It's like this is the first, like Patricia Arquette is like she's like an all-timer love interest. I'm 100% monogamous, and she says that from the first time they met, that I love you. It's like that. Interestingly enough, that movie is one of my favorite, like, when I'm just broken up movies. And it's because that relationship feels like it's this unreachable thing that is like idealized. So whenever I'm feeling bad, I'm like, that could have never been what that is. It sort of makes me feel better. I don't know. It's a weird thing. That movie kind of works for me that way.
It's such a great ensemble. I mean, we already talked about some. You got Walking Hopper scene is great. You got Gary Oldman being again. I'm not going to hop on anymore, but that's one of my favorite scenes of the movie as well. You got Samuel L. Jackson doing his thing. You got Michael Rappaport doing like he's hilarious.
Yes. Yeah, man.
Oh, he's so awesome. We got Brad Pitt in there.
Brad Pitt as Elvis.
Yeah, Brad Pitt. No, Brad Pitt's. Yeah, Stoner Pitt on the couch. That's like a classic. That's like a classic early Brad Pitt, like in a movie game, who was in what type of role. That's just like, that'll be a Schmodown question eventually, right? Like, who was the stoner on the couch?
It's gotta be in there.
I got a question though. There's Val Kilmer is listed in the movie. I don't know who he played though.
I thought he plays Elvis.
He does.
Who,
plays Elvis.
Really? That was Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
I didn't know that. I was like, okay, when the credits rolled, I was like, wow, well, Val Kilmer's in this. I had no idea. And the movie ended, I'm like, I didn't see Val Kilmer in here.
Yeah, I think it is the voice of Elvis. Yeah.
This film. All
right, we got to talk a little bit about the Hopper
Walker
walk-in scene. But just this one moment that when Hopper says, I'm not going to say what he actually says, it's like Sicilians were spawned by, and then there's this pause, and Kilmer goes, what? Like he doesn't do much, but the way he's just like,
it's just peak.
What?
It's just a little thing that made the I love it. I'm sorry, continue.
No, that's it. I feel like that scene, we just had to talk about it a little bit.
It's a pretty legendary scene, and it's honestly it's probably the most sort of most Tarantino scene in the entire movie, in the sense that it feels like a scene that if it was in one of his movies, we would all talk about it the way we talk about it. But it's the fact that it's in True Romance makes True Romance almost elevate to a level where like that feels like the most Tarantino part of the whole movie. And I think if you take that scene out of the movie, it probably honestly ends up being just sort of a good adventure. But like that scene has so much of like his fingerprints all over it that it elevates the movie, I think, to a different level. Not even a good, just in terms of just status.
And I'll end up. The last thing I will say is, he mentioned Christian Slater and Arquette. Like there wasn't anything special about anybody really could have filled those roles, but the roles themselves, the characters themselves, were what needed, because you kind of needed that to be your audience, like looking into the crazy situation. You got to be able to embrace who they are in order to go on this really weird journey, and you do because the characters are well enough written that you want to know more about them. You want to root for them, even though they're like, who are these people? Who I don't. You want to root for them. You want to root for this romance to happen. So it's key to me in the film, and it works.
I feel like Patricia is more key to the role than
I agree. You're right.
Slater is.
And Slater is it? You're not wrong on that. So All right. Well, we got 3. We're all down to 3. We're in our top 2. So we all had number 3 as True Romance. I mean, it's pretty easy for me to say.
I guess our top two are all going to be the same. I feel like they will be. So I wonder. So okay, my number 2 is going to be Man on Fire, and I wonder is my number 2 the same for either of you or no?
We have it switched.
My number Man on Fire is my number 1.
My number 1 as well.
Okay.
Number 2 is Go Bama, Roll Tide.
Yeah. So okay. So we're right now we're gonna go back and forth talking about Man on Fire and Crimson Tide. So let's start with. All right, so let's start with Man on Fire because we're here now.
Okay,
and talk about why it's great, and then we can end on Crimson Tide. So Man on Fire, obviously, it kind of starts the part of Tony Stott's career that I shouldn't say we all. I love the stylized green filter. Like, I have a style as a director. Part of his career, it starts here, and it's just great. Like aging, operative Denzel who gets shot and he's kind of dying and bleeding out throughout the movie. And he's just super intense. He's a drunk, and like his relationship to Dakota Fanning and just the sort of ruthless nature of both him hunting the criminals, but also of the family being like the ruthless nature of getting my daughter back. Like those two things, the parallels there are just great. I've talked many times about, when Denzel obviously sees Dakota on the bridge and I love you, Creasy. And like that moment is just the most incredible, like talk about like an emotional scene at the end of a fucking action movie. When that scene happens, how do you not start crying? It's so good.
For sure.
Ball every time. Hardcore. Like, oh man, there's so
I ball even when they're bonding and she finally hugs him and says, I love you, Creasy. Like she said it before. That's what I already break down.
There's so much about this in this movie that is so great. I mean, I think it might be Denzel's. I hesitate to say finest role.
No, do please say that because I totally agree.
Role. I mean, you could throw out Malcolm X, you could throw out something like that, but this was the one that I really felt like I connected with the most. He's not the uber heroic character. He's that real down to earth guy with real flaws, real problems, just trying to make it through. He has this great chemistry with Dakota Fanning throughout the entire movie. It's what sells the movie is their chemistry, this little kid performance and him. And when he gets to that point where you have that revenge moment, you're like, oh, fuck. My favorite whole sequence of the whole movie was Christopher Walken. And he has the whole line, a man can be an artist about anything, about food, about anything. Yeah. His career, his art, his death. He's about to paint his masterpiece. Holy fucking shit! You're like, you get that big fist bump moment. You're like, no, you're fucking done now, man.
There's this other quote by Denzel that is one of my favorite quotes in movies of all time, but it's the way he says it. It's when he's got this guy tied up, and it just goes, "I wish you had more time," and he just walks away, and the car blows up.
Oh man, there's so much about this. I mean, you got Christopher, like Christopher Walken in there, and I'm forgetting his name now. Iron Man 2 wrestler,
Mickey Rourke
in there. Another great before his renaissance. And he had great moments in there. You got Mark. It's so much that goes on in this film. The first time I saw it, I remember I thought it felt a little slow at points, and then I rewatched it 2, 3 for my 4th rewatch. Now it's blown away at how much it works for me now. It's because, again, like I said, because for me it's Creasy and Dakota Fanning together. It's such a heart that is not in a lot of other movies in the Tony, and even in all of the Tony Scott movies. There's such a heart in this movie that you can't stop.
There's Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jarvi. No, go ahead.
No, you go first.
I was just gonna say, like the relationship the two of them have, and honestly, it even goes to just like their moments, like when she's getting off the blocks and in the swimming meet, like you just and like him helping her, like those moments are just phenomenal. Like you just watch it and it's like this is such an enjoyable and memorable action movie. And it has like elements to it that like most action movies don't have. I think that probably the weakest part of the movie is like a lot of the supporting stuff that he has to kind of go do to get there. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of like meeting people and interrogating people and blowing people's asses up it's fine, but that's not like, I think the relationship of those two is like what makes the movie great. And I think if and the weird thing about this movie is this is a remake of a 1987 film with Scott Glenn.
I think I've never seen the remake. I think it's even like they remade it 2 times. I feel like.
Oh really?
I don't know that. That's possible. I don't know. I'll look it up.
Maybe I'm confusing it with something, but I think it might have been the third time.
Wouldn't surprise me if there was like a 50s, 60s.
You were talking about like blowing people asses up. There's there's a deleted scene. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Go for it.
There's actually a alternative ending deleted scene because the movie ends with the theatrical version ends when he's crossing the bridge and he goes in the car. And that's pretty much how it ends. There is actually an extended ending that he goes face to face with the kidnapper boss. And they actually have a conversation.
Oh, and he's got a bomb up his own ass.
He's got a bomb up his own
ass. Yeah.
And he blows up the entire compound.
I've seen that.
Oh, that's funny. I have not seen that, so I'm gonna take a look at that. I'm gonna look it up after we're done here because that sounds amazing. But this is sort of the like ultimate. It's sort of the ultimate like underrated Denzel movie. It's the ultimate underrated Tony Scott movie. Revenge movie too.
Yeah, like I feel like this movie is usually talked about by people as like a favorite, but not a great movie. And I feel like the fact that this is the number 2 Tony Scott movie for me and the number 1 for you guys is a pretty good indicator of just how well this movie has aged for most people. That's
what it is. It's aged very well. It's very
I think the rewatch of this movie for most people is like, this is just the best. I would watch this shit over most Denzel movies. Like it's top 3, top 5 for him.
And I love that it's so definitively Tony Scott right from the beginning. You have the camera sequences, the editing, how it's working, the music pumping, music again,
the gun,
everything is about that works out. There's so much to love about this film that I'm so happy that I hope we all agree, and it's in our top 2 out of 5. So I guess that's
my number 25 of all time.
25 of all time.
On my all-time list. Yeah.
I have to make one of those eventually. I gave it 5 stars, so. Perfect 5 stars.
Well, for anybody who's watching the channel, by the way, if you guys have not already left a comment, leave a comment. Well, I guess you can't tell after the thing's done streaming, but leave a thumbs up at least. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you let us know you're enjoying the video. Another comment here from Galagos. The writer Brian Helgeland was given the original Man on Fire by Tarantino himself when he worked in a video store in the 80s. Wow. #full circle. Big time salute to you, my friend. I've heard that story before. Helgeland. I wrote a lot of good shit. Absolutely. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Ben's number 1 and our number 2.
Yeah.
I really could have flip-flopped either way. They're both very good movies. But Crimson Tide is without doubt, like we talked about a little bit before, quintessential 90s movie, action movies. And in fact, the reason why I like it so much is it reminds me of one of my other favorite movies, The Rock. It's in terms of you have this villainous lead. They're not really villains per se. I mean, it has a lot of flaws, but he's not necessarily a bad guy. You understand where he's going from, and you put him up against Denzel in this case. There's so much as far as the tone of this film, the claustrophobic feel to it, the way he uses the sub as this other character because you feel like you're in the sub with him the entire movie, and I almost feel like when I'm watching, I can't breathe sometimes because that's how heavy it feels.
It's so sweaty.
It is. They're all
so sweaty. It's very sweaty. Sweaty Vigo, sweaty Denzel. I feel like for this movie, what I think is so incredible about this movie is that the sort of showdown of youngish Denzel and definitely getting to the end of his run, Hackman. Like they're going head to head, toe to toe, and it's so good every time they're in a scene together. It's from the second they meet. And he's being like, it was a very short list, to the time they're smoking cigars on the deck, to the mess hall, to any of the confrontations on the floor. And Hackman's just, when he's like, why don't you shut the fuck up? When he has his fucking scenes where he's like, those scenes, like, and then of course, my favorite scene in the entire movie, when, when Denzel is, it's when Denzel's quoting the whole thing. And he's like, we cannot fire the missiles unless both you and I agree. Like whatever he says, whatever the fucking line is.
Right.
He's quoting the regulations and like everybody's and dude, everyone. Fucking everybody in the whole ship. So Matt Craven, the guy who's like, I did what I did because I did it. Fuck you.
Yes,
that guy is like so good and like just everything. That movie is just chock full of just 90s action machismo. Like when I watch that movie, I am so fucking in, and it has so many set pieces that are so exciting. Even when like there's a missile coming at them, and they like get around it by going low or whatever, and it like doesn't hit, and everybody's like, yeah! Everybody's cheering, and like it's just God, like 90s thrillers had that thing where like everybody working together, and it's like we're all cheering as though the world has been saved, but like there's probably another horrible threat around the corner. We just like show us all cheering first. Like that's like it's just I don't know, that movie is just I fucking adore that movie. It's so good.
I definitely gotta throw it in there. I'll throw it real quick. Dome Sign wants to say, didn't Quentin do a pass on the script? I believe that's true that he did a pass on the script for Crimson Tide.
He did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
There's also a very famous story where he came on set and like Denzel gave him a really hard time for having used the N-word in like a lot of his scripts.
Right.
And it was sort of uncomfortable on set. And then years later, I guess Denzel sent him a letter basically apologizing for bringing it up on set and saying like, hey, I think you're very talented. I'm sorry for bringing that up on set. Like, you know, I like kind of like we have an understanding. I don't know if he was like, I would like to talk about this in a different setting, but like I heard, you know, on a podcast that was what happened, which I think is cool.
Makes sense. Jake Alcavetta, thank you, Jake. Ben is the only one here who is correct, and that effing hurts to say. It says that Jake is now Team Bateman, and it's canon. So we'll go with that, I guess. But I will say, one of the fist bump moments I had for me, it's a small moment. I might to throw it out there since we're talking about it. The scene after the mutiny, there is this look that Denzel gives Viggo Mortensen. And I literally like, I felt like I did something wrong. Like that's how good Denzel is. Like when he looks you in your eyes, he goes deep into your soul, and he can touch you at that level. It's such a great subtle moment, and the film is full. And in a film that's not very subtle, there is some subtle moments by Denzel that really really make it work.
How many times have you given that look to Kim when you fucked up?
Oh, I got that look at Kim. Yeah, Kim's definitely giving me that look.
I mean the other way. Yeah,
several times.
my favorite scene in the movie is when we're almost at the conclusion of the movie, when they decided they're gonna wait. They're sitting down. They got 30 seconds to go, and Hackman just goes, "You know, these Portuguese horses." They sort of just like brings down the clock, starts talking, just like man to man. That is such a ballsy move. He's like putting all out there. Just I don't care what's going on. We're just gonna have a conversation now.
Damn straight.
and also the beauty of that scene is that he's wrong, right? And Denzel corrects him. Denzel's like, no, the horses are black, sir.
They were black. Yep.
Yeah, and it's such a great, it's just such a fucking great fuck you. Like, oh god, that scene's good. It's so good. But I agree. Like Hackman being like, you know what, I'm a captain. I'm just gonna do my thing. I'm just gonna like say what I want to say. Yeah,
to get on the table kind of thing, you know.
Also the trailer to that movie. I know I've said it. You guys know I've talked about it on AMA before, but like, it's one of the most incredible '90s trailers I've ever watched. It starts with like heroic music, the boat's kind of going down, like, and then it's like, and you hear like the voiceover's like, what we've always known becomes what we've always feared, and you're like, oh god, this movie's good.
I'm in.
Interesting, you're bringing up the trailer voice, but I remember you and Drew talking about Denzel's voice and how he changed it. I feel like this is like on the back end of when he was doing this, higher voice. After that, he sort of brought it down a bit. But I cannot unsee that and unhear that whenever I'm watching Denzel movies now. Like you kind of like broke that, illusion for me.
Yeah, right.
but it's a very interesting insight.
Yeah, it is. One more thing I want to bring up in this film too. I love the score. Hans Zimmer's score is top notch.
He's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT.
Shit.
Yeah.
This is a running battle we have. I go John Williams. He goes with Hans Zimmer. And
who? John who?
Shut your mouth, Richard Jarvi. Shut your mouth.
It's like a pretty tough argument because I feel like Williams has all these like legacy credits where I'm just like, yeah, like I give it to you, but Zimmer, like the number of things I can think of where I'm like, wow, Hans Zimmer blew my fucking mind. He like changed my life with that, and it's like he doesn't have the Star Wars and the Jurassic Parks, but he has like
Dark Knight
other movies that are all amazing, plus all of his iconic movies, and like. I don't know, man. I mean, it's hard to argue against John Williams, Jarvi. I got to tell you, but like, You might be able to convince me. Honestly, it's possible.
Here's why, and here's why I love it. I love Hans Zimmer. So when we argue, it's not against Hans Zimmer because he's he's probably my second favorite, if anything else. The issue is it's almost because John Williams is too familiar. You're too familiar with John Williams. You've heard John Williams so much that you almost take it for granted to a degree. You hear that Star Wars thing, you hear that Superman, you hear Indiana Jones, you're just used to hearing it. It doesn't wow you like Hans Zimmer just does, because Hans Zimmer has more of those moments where you're like, oh, this is great music. You already got that with John Williams. So that's where I think that possibility of Hans Zimmer comes in. If you took him out from again, you took him all the way, and you never heard anything, and then you went forward again, watching the movies again, you'd be like, John Williams does this. That's my own.
Yes.
My own thing. But I will go with that. So we are finished here. Now I'm gonna do this quick little tally we have. We're gonna have. I'll let you know what the class action composite top 5 is, and I will in order. Now we do have a tie for fifth. A tie for fifth between Spy Game and Unstoppable is our tie for fifth.
Wow.
Our number 4.
Spy Game. Yes.
Our number 4 is Deja Vu.
Yes, I love it. The consensus makes the top 5.
So happy. And then our 3, 2, 1 are the ones we basically just said. Obviously, just different order. It's True Romance is 3. Crimson Tide is 2 because Jarvi and I put Man on Fire first. So therefore, Man on Fire is considered the class action, saying Man on Fire is the greatest Tony Scott movie of all time, and I'm happy with that. I couldn't be more pleased.
All right, rock and roll,
totally
man.
Happy with
Love
that.
it.
You guys feeling that? You guys all good with that at that level? You think we're
it feels fair. It's a great fucking movie.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Well, guys, that's it for tonight's show. I want to thank Ben Bateman for coming on. We really appreciate having you on the show. It's really good to have. Why don't you plug where you're going to be, anything you're doing with Nerds and Suits, Action Army, everything you want to do.
Yeah, you guys can check out all the Thursday. We're doing another episode of the mukbang reviews here. Look at that.
Thank you, mukbang.
I love that.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Thursday, we're going to be doing an episode of the General Debate. It'll be head-to-head, Team Bateman versus Team Guy, trying to argue for what is the greatest revenge film of all time. It's at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday. Real excited for that one. And then, there's some other stuff too. Nerds and Suits has an interview with Johnny Cruz, the voice of Lucio in Overwatch. That airs on Friday. He's one of my good friends. It should be a lot of fun. That's kind of what I have for it now. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Jarvi, you want to play anything?
Oh, for sure. You can find me here weekly with Paul DiNuzio on Class Action.
That's it. Okay. All right. At Paul DiNuzio on Twitter for myself. Next week at Class Action, which will be back on our normal regular Saturday schedule. Saturday, we will. I'll throw it in there real quick. August. Again, on $2 with a great episode. Anticipated this one and loved it. Thank you, Andreas, my friend.
Thank you so much.
So happy you're here. You guys want to do a quick Century Club? Maybe Kaiser. Maybe not. I'll join you next time. Maybe you can have you on. I'll definitely do another Century Club. That was hilarious. But
Kaiser, I'm hoping the Yugoslavians didn't get to you.
That's true. That's true. Last time. Anyway, next week on Saturday, we are doing what we mentioned before. We're going to be joined by the great Eddie Green. If you know Eddie Green, if you're a longtime Action Movie Anatomy fan, you know that name. Ben's been on his podcast. Actually, Jarvi made an appearance on his podcast recently. And I'm going to at some point, he says. We'll see what happens when that is. We are going to continue our Tony Scott love, and we are going to taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, placing up against Unstoppable. And we'll see what shakes out. And then
trains versus trains.
Yeah, man.
You go wrong, right?
Denzel versus Denzel.
And of course, we'll probably be on Chilled Action tomorrow on the Call to Action podcast, where we are interviewing Eric Zipper from the Movie Trivia Showdown. And that's what I will plug for now. And that's all I will say. Thank you very much. Leave those comments, leave those likes, leave those subscriptions in there, and let us know what you want to see on the show, because we're always looking for more topics. We just started branching out into director versus director. We had a great episode featuring Chris Nolan versus Denis Villeneuve. That was a fun one we did last week. We're trying to do more of those. I heard that was actually pretty popular as far as that went, so that's where to go with. But anything else we're looking for, we'd love to hear your opinion, love to get those comments on that. Otherwise, thanks for staying with us, staying with us this night. Thanks again for Ben Bateman. Thanks, Richard Eric Jarvi. I am Paul DiNuzio. PLD, of course, we salute you.